Good evening, everybody. This is Brian with River City Outdoors coming back to you with Catfish Rods Part 2. In Part 1 of this video, I talked about fishing rods in general in terms of, specifications and, things like rod power and rod action explained in terms of, actual definitions and what they are and so forth, so that I could help you guys with what seems to be a constant confusion over those things. And then, I went into detail in terms of catfish rods and general characteristics that you see with good catfish rods, and then we talked about materials and construction and components and features that make good catfish rods. So today in this part 2 video, I have lists that I have created for you guys to see, where I've taken, basically a sample of, a pretty sizable amount of what's on the market out there in terms of catfish rods. And I've broken these down into 3 tiers. And the tiers are, based on price. And for the most part, the price is kind of indicative of the quality of the rod. Your catfish rods or fishing rods in general are pretty much like anything else. You get what you pay for. But, there's plenty of things that will work and work well in every price category that I've broken down here for you guys. So I've got them in 3 tiers. Tier 1 will be the higher quality, more expensive, or most expensive catfish rods. Tier 2 will be a mid-range, high quality rods that are in an affordable range for most people. And then tier 3 being the cheapest rods, but definitely there's plenty of rods on that list that will work for most anybody. So this is to help you guys get a fix on what's out there, where it's available, how to get it, how much does it cost, and some as much general information about these rods as I can give you. Also, some of the rods on this list I've never even laid eyes on, let alone owned or fished with. And then some of the rods I have owned or do own, and I have fished with them, so I can give you some details about them. So I'm gonna turn the camera around for you guys here in just a second, so we can get to working through this list. And I hope you guys enjoyed the first part of this catfish rod video just as much as I hope you enjoy this part of it. I hope to be as informative about this stuff as possible, so that for any of you that are new to catfishing, want to buy a new catfish rod, this will help you understand what's out there, and what kind of price range you're in for what you're looking for, what you need, or what you want, or what have you. And for anybody that's already got catfish rods that's looking to purchase more or something different, hopefully this is helpful to you guys also. So let's get started here. Okay, so we're going to start with my tier 3 list. And tier 3 obviously is the most affordable and budget friendly group of rods. And I've got the price set for each tier. And for this tier, we're up to $60. Okay. As you can see, we start at $30 because nowadays that's your bottom pretty much, no matter what you do. You might catch some of these on sale for $25. But for the most part, for cat rods that are going to work well for catfishing, $30 is pretty much the bottom if you're buying the rods separately. So that's where we're going to start. And I started with Berkley big game rods at $30. And the reason I started there is because of all these rods on this list, this is one of the most widely available rods out there. And the reason being is because, you know, nowadays pretty much everybody has a Walmart within an hour or less of where they live. And, you know, most people have anywhere from 1 to 3 Walmarts in the cities they live in. Here in Jeff City, we have 2. You know, and Columbia has more than 2. You know, and Moberly, the area I grew up around, has 1. So, I mean, you know, for here in Missouri, you know, most of us have access to a Walmart, and most of us throughout the country have access to a Walmart. And I have yet to walk into any Walmart, whether it be here in Missouri or in other states, and not see Berkeley big game rods for sale. So these rods they're out there in pretty much every Walmart. They're on Walmart, you know, their online thing. You can purchase them through the app, you know, with free shipping and whatnot too. And then there are other websites out there that have them also. Amazon sells them for the same price. And of course, if you have Prime, you get the shipping for free. So you're not doing anything at that point differently than what you would be doing, you know, by shopping them from Walmart, or purchasing from Walmart rather. As I said, I've owned 2 of them. The 2 that I owned were single piece rods. They make them in a single piece and 2-piece configuration. You know, they're just a good basic fiberglass rod with EVA handles and graphite reel seats. You know, they come in the right power and action settings to make a good catfish rod, and they're pretty durable rods. And they've got pretty decent action on them. They're not too limber, but they're not too stiff. Most of them are a moderate fast or a fast action. So, I mean, they definitely work well for a catfish rod, and on a budget, they're one of the best options. Next is the Bass Pro Cabela's King Cat rods. These were originally a Cabela's offering, and then when Bass Pro purchased Cabela's, it became a Bass Pro offering. They're at $30. You can walk into any Bass Pro or Cabela's and purchase those rods for $30 in the store. You can also purchase them online through Bass Pro. And, you know, they have times where, you know, the shipping on those are free also. So, you know, you can do pretty good there. Now, the one thing I will note on the King Cat rods is they are all 2-piece rods. But if you don't mind that and you're looking for rods that they come in 7 to 11 foot configurations. So, you know, if you're looking for a longer, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11 foot rod for $30, you know, that's a pretty good rod. You know, the actions and power settings on them are really good for catfishing. I know a few people that own them. I haven't heard any bad things about them. I've never personally owned one or fished with one, but I have handled them at Bass Pro and looked at them on quite a few occasions, and, you know, everything looks good and feels good about them. So, you know, that's also a pretty good bargain. And then you go to the Eagle Claw Cat Claw rods. I have seen these rods in person at Bass Pro, because Bass Pro does sell some Eagle Claw rods. The Eagle Claw rods I've seen more often than not in Bass Pro Shop were either their snagging rods for paddlefish or their catfish rods. I'm not sure if our Bass Pro in Columbia, that's the most local one to Jeff City, you know, currently has them in stock or not, but I've definitely seen them there in the past, and that rod goes for $35 as well. All 3 of the top 3 rods are pretty much the same thing. They're, you know, just good quality, you know, generic fiberglass, you know, fiberglass that works well for, you know, making catfish rods. They've all got, you know, a decent quality graphite reel seat. They're all made pretty heavy duty and durable. And for $30 to $35, any one of those 3 rods would be a good pick. And then you got the next rods on the list, which is Lou's Mr. Catfish Rods at $35. I have seen those at Dick's Sporting Goods and online elsewhere. So they're definitely out there. And then another one, like the Berkeley Big Game Rod that's not listed as a catfish rod, is the Bass Pro Shops, the Power Plus Trophy Class rods at $40. I've never owned one of those, but I have looked at them on many occasions in the Bass Pro store. They're technically more like a saltwater fishing rod, but the action and power settings that those rods are available in are spot on for catfishing. And at $40, they're well made. My only gripe with those rods are that they're all black, so you have to do something to help at least tip visibility at nighttime, whether that's attach some glow sticks or do a custom paint job on the tip, or whatever it is that you would choose to do. But at $40, those are a well-made rod, and like I said, the actions and power settings for those rods are spot on for catfishing. Then you go to the B&M Silver Cat. I've seen B&M poles in general in a lot of places, including Walmart. I don't know that I've ever seen a Silver Cat in Walmart, but I have seen a Silver Cat at Academy, both here in Jeff City and in Columbia. At $45, it's not a bad buy, but there are some details about that rod I'll go over here in a minute. Ugly Stick GX2. Probably the easiest one on this list to find, because you can go pretty much anywhere that sells any kind of fishing equipment and they have Ugly Stick GX2s. We're talking about Walmart and Academy and farm and home stores like Tractor Supply. Any place that has fishing rods in stock in the store is probably going to have an Ugly Stick GX2. $50 generally, but I have seen them marked up to $60, but I've also seen them marked down to $40. But $50 is about the average price you'd expect to pay. I do own them. I've owned quite a few of them. They are a very good, durable, tough rod, especially for the money. The action and power settings on them that are available are really good. They definitely work for catfishing. The line ratings and lure weight ratings on them, are about average for what you see in this price category of rods, which I'll go over here shortly. The Ugly Stick GX2s definitely, have a place on this list, even regardless of the fact they're not a dedicated catfish rod. And then you do have the Ugly Stick Catfish Rod, which is their one of their dedicated catfish versions. Price nowadays is up to $60. That rod was a rod that I used to primarily run for catfishing. Like, there was a time when that was the only catfish rods I had. And, but back then you could buy them for $30. And now that the price has gone up and you're generally looking at, $60 on the top end, there are better options out there for $60. But if you can catch them on sale, which I have, and that's the only time I ever buy them, if I'm going to buy them. Like when I bought them for my kids, I caught them on sale, or I bought them from a place where they were on sale. If you can get them for down around $40, maybe even $45, then it's a pretty decent rod. But for $60, there's definitely better options. Rip and Lips Super Cat Legacy at $60, which is pretty much, aside from the color, the exact same layout as the next rod on the list, which is the Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker at $60. And then a new company that has come out in the recent years, very recent years, is Catfish Pro. And they have a few rod series that they sell, and their cheapest one is the Fishing for Fun series at $60. I've looked at some Catfish Pro rods. They're pretty run-of-the-mill. I don't feel that they're on the level of the Rip and Lips or the Whisker Seeker rods above it, but they are priced in the same price category. Um, what I will say about the Catfish Pro Fishing for Fun series is I cannot find on their website I can find the line rating for those rods, but I cannot find the lure rating. So I personally cannot tell you guys, like how much weight you can even throw with one of those rods. For some reason they do not have it listed, and I even tried to do like an Amazon AI search on it and couldn't come up with the information. So I guess you'd have to have one of those rods in your hand to which I have not yet to know what the lure rating is on it, which is kind of an important feature to a rod if you're going to buy one for river fishing especially. And then the last on the list is Meat Hunter MHR at $60. Now, I know a couple places that sells Meat Hunter rods, and they seem to be pretty decent rods, for the money. But this is the top end of the tier 3 list. From what I've seen, I feel like the Rip and Lips and the Whisker Seeker rods, are again for $60 a better rod than a Meat Hunter rod. But Meat Hunter rods seem to be pretty good rods overall as well. Now I'm going to go over some notes that I created for this list. And the first is that the first 6 rods on this list, so the Berkley Big Game, the Bass Pro King Cat, the Eagle Claw Cat Claw, the Lew's Mr. Catfish, the Bass Pro Trophy Plus, and the B&M Silver Cat, okay? All 6 of those rods have either ceramic, titanium oxide, or aluminum oxide inserts in the line guides, okay? The only one that has ceramic inserts on the line guides is the B&M Silver Cat. And as I've stated in a previous video talking about line guides that have inserts in them, the ceramic inserts are prone to cracking and breaking. So as I said, there was something a detail I was going to go over about the B&M Silver Cat. Because of that, that would be a rod that, I would personally overlook on this list, because the ceramic inserts in line guides, if you get one that cracks in your rod tip, then you generally have to replace the rod tip. If you get one that cracks in a guide that's down the rod blank, that could lead to an even bigger problem. So that would require sending the rod to the company and having them fix it, or if you have all the equipment to take the epoxy off and strip the guide wrapping off and put a new guide on and rewrap it and re-epoxy it and all that stuff, which does take time and money and effort and equipment. But if you have all that stuff, then obviously you're probably less concerned about that than I am. But I don't own all of the things to do full-on rod repairs like that, so I try to stray away from potentially problematic issues. And so so the B&M Silver Cat, for that reason, would be a pass compared to the rest of the rods on this list. So titanium oxide, the only rod on this list that has titanium oxide inserts is the Berkley Big Game rods. And then the rest of them have the rest of the 6 have aluminum oxide guide inserts. Now, because of the way those metallic guide inserts are installed in the line guides, I personally have never experienced any issues with those. So I wouldn't stray away from one of the rods that have the metal inserts in the line guides, due to the fact that they don't seem to be as trouble prone as ceramic inserts do. The worst thing that's going to happen with one of those is it's going to pop out. it's not likely to crack and have a segment break out of it and then have a jagged section in it that's going to mess up your line when it flows through it and all that stuff. So I'd be more inclined to be okay with titanium oxide or aluminum oxide guide inserts than I would be on the ceramic guide inserts. And then note 2 is that all the rods on this whole entire list have graphite reel seats. And that's fine because, you're in a price class where I feel like, that's fair. And number 3 is most of these rods have a lure rating that is under 8 ounces, which makes them unsuitable for using heavy sinkers at 8 ounces plus. So the majority of these rods are not going to work for you if you're wanting to fish big rivers with heavy current. But there are a few rods that will work for you, and I'm going to go over those right now. The Rip and Lips Supercat Legacy has a 1 to 10 ounce lure rating, as does the Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker. I don't know what the line rating is for the Catfish Pro, as I stated, and then the Meat Hunter MHR will go up to 8 ounces minimum for sure. I can't remember what the top end is on that particular rod, but I know it's at least. I know it goes to at least 8 ounces. So I apologize for that. There's a lot of information rumbling around in my head, if you will. Yeah, I can't remember what it is on the Meat Hunter MHR, but I know it was at minimum 8 ounces. And that seemed to be, once you got into the $60-ish category, that seemed to be pretty stable across the board in terms of, going up to at least 8 ounces of lure weight rating. But the two on the list that have the heaviest is definitely the Rip and Lip Supercat Legacy and the Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker. And as I stated a minute ago, those are essentially the same rod. They're both 7'6". They're medium heavy fast action rods. They are a single piece blank. I think you can get you can get the Supercat Legacy in a single piece or 2 piece, whereas the Hog Seeker rods, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they make those in also a 10-foot configuration that's 2 piece, but all the 7.5 foot rods I've seen are single piece rods. Overall, and they're both made out of S-glass. So the only real difference between the Rip and Lips and the Whisker Seeker rods on this list are, the Rip and Lips rod is basically a black and red rod with a white high-vis tip. And the Whisker Seeker rods they come in either green and black or orange and black. And those are fluorescent colors, and they are UV reactive, so those rods do glow in the black light. Now, for me, the difference between those two is the fact that I own some Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker rods because there's a store I can walk into here in Missouri. There's a few of them actually here local that sell Whisker Seeker stuff. And so I can walk into a store and buy those rods. The Rip and Lips rods, I've never seen one in the state of Missouri personally. So, that makes a difference. And that's going to lead us into the next part here. So for anyone who's wondering, what are the green check marks about? The green check marks indicate my top picks for each list. Okay. So as you can see, the Berkley Big Game rod for, the lower price category is my top pick. And the only reason I have it over the Cabela's King Cat, it's not that I think that it's a truly better rod than the King Cat rod, but the reason, they're basically the same rods, truthfully. The reason that I have it as a pick above the King Cat rod is because it is available in a couple of single piece configurations, which I do prefer personally. Otherwise, it's a toss-up. Okay. The Ugly Stick GX2 at $50, that rod's a good buy because it is a very good quality rod. But if you can get it down around $40 to $45, that's an even better buy on the Ugly Stick GX2. It's for the money versus the performance and the durability and toughness of those rods. It is definitely one of the better rods on this list, and one of my favorite rods on this list. So it is one of my top picks. I definitely would suggest that anybody who has not tried one that's, interested in doing so, go and buy you a GX2 and try it out, because they are really, really good rods. And then the Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker, the last top pick on this list is, and as I just explained, I would do both the Rip and Lips rod and the Whisker Seeker rod as top picks, but I don't know of any store local to me that sells those. So I would have to take a $60 rod and add, $15 to $25 shipping, making it a $75 or $85 rod. And for me, that's just not worth it, especially since, as I've stated before, I will not buy rods at over $60 that do not have all metal reel seats. At $60 and under with a graphite reel seat is fine. So, buying the Rip and Lip Supercat Legacy, that's not going to work for me in terms of, my own personal criteria. Meat Hunter MHR rods are a little bit harder to get a hold of. Like I said, I've seen them in a couple stores, but I would have to travel an hour and a half minimum to go and pick one up, because the most local store to me that I've seen Meat Hunter MHR rods are in Warsaw, Missouri, down on Truman Lake. And I'm not even sure if he carries those anymore, because he's gotten to carrying some of the higher end rods like the Whisper Seeker rods and Mad Cats and Catch the Fever rods. So, excuse me. So I'm not sure if he's carrying Meat Hunter rods anymore, but he was, and that's still an hour and a half drive. Whereas I can go, about 12 minutes from here and buy Hog Seeker or Whisker Seeker stuff. So that's part of the reason why the Meat Hunter rods are not one of my top picks. And then the Catfish Pro, I don't think that it is the equivalent of the Rip and Lips or the Whisker Seeker or the Meat Hunter rods for $60, but it has an equivalent price tag on it. That's just my opinion as of right now. And until, something further comes along where I've got more info and experience with those rods, but personally based on specifications and the information that's out there on those rods, I don't think they belong in the same price category as the other three rods. So just my take, take it for what you will, but I'm putting out information that pertains to, both the facts on these rods and, and my opinions based on, the experiences that I have. So again, kind of an overview, you can see, we have a few rods that are not dedicated Catfish rods, but most of them are. And that covers you for, tier 3 from $30 to $60. So we're going to get to tier 2 rods. As you can see, we're mid-priced. We start at $65 and we go to $100. Okay. So it starts with the Okuma Cat Slayer at $69. The Eagle Claw Cat Claw 2.0 at $70. The Diadem Silver Cat Magnum at $72. The Rip and Lips Super Cat HD at $70 to $90. Now, these that I show you a price range on, more often than not, the reason that is because of the fact that they offer some longer lengths, and the longer length variant is more expensive. And in a few of these cases, the longer length rods go just over $100. But the reason that I still included them on the list is because the standard variant of the rod is still within the $65 to $100 price category. Okay, so then you go to the Ugly Stick Catfish Special. which is $75 to $85 depending on length. And then the Whisker Seeker Catfish and Carp Series rod is $76. And the Whisker Seeker GFX, which is the lower priced variant of the Chad Ferguson Signature Series rods, is also $76. Catfish Sumo, a company that a lot of you have never heard about. If you don't watch the kayak catfishing channel on YouTube, you probably haven't heard of Catfish Sumo rods unless you've seen their advertisements on social media. The original chopstick rod of theirs is $80. And then TWC is Tangling with Catfish rods. They have been around for a long time, probably the first premium grade catfish rod on the market. The first one I remember for certain. All of their series of rods go from $80 to $115. And that's depending on length. The $115 rod is their extender series, which is, I believe, 10 feet, and they're a $115 rod. The remainder of them, most of their rods are $80. And then you go to the Bass Pro Cat Max, which is $80 to $90 depending on length, because I think they sell those up to 10 or 11 feet. And then the Whisker Seeker Full Metal Jacket rod, FMJ, that is the premium rod in the Chad Ferguson Signature Series at $94. The Catch the Fever Hellcat, the original Hellcat, now they are $95 to $140. Okay, $95 is what the 7.5 foot variants cost now, and $140 is what the 10 foot variant costs. Then the B&M Silver Cat Elite is $100. The Ugly Stick Carbon Catfish is $100 to $110, again depending on length. The Catch the Fever Big Cat Fever rod, the new Zach Royce series rod, is $100. The Mad Cats rods, most of the Mad Cats rods are $100. The $145 rods are their specific bumping model of rod. But they're still on the list because the majority of the rods they sell are 7.5 foot rods, and they are right at $100 on price. Okay, and Mad Cats are, most of these rods on this list, somebody has at least heard of these brands. Okay, so notes on these rods. The stars indicate models with metal reel seats. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rods on this list that have metal reel seats. But you can see that a lot of the rods on this list do not have all metal reel seats. And when you consider the Rip and Lip Supercat HD, the baseline model of those is $70, and it's got an all metal reel seat. It's kind of hard to justify spending more money on other rods that do not have all metal reel seats. That's a hard sell. As I've stated, in previous videos, $60 is my threshold on price for a rod without metal reel seats. So there are a lot of the rods on this list that I personally am not interested in due to features and components. Now, you are free to make whatever purchasing decisions that you wish, of course. And I'm not going to tell you that, every rod on here that doesn't have a star on it is junk because it doesn't have a metal reel seat, because I know that's not the case. But what I'm trying to show you, or part of what I'm trying to show you, is the value instilled in some of these rods. Okay? Some of these rods are a better value than others because of the components that they come with standard. The fact of the matter is an all metal reel seat is far more durable than a graphite reel seat, and they stay locked in. Like the locking nuts stay locked down on your reel a lot better and a lot longer than what you typically see with a graphite reel seat. Now, I will go back to this first list for a second because there's something I wanted to mention. That's one of the reasons why the Whisker Seeker Hog Seeker at $60 is one of my top picks, because it has a graphite reel seat, but it's a very good quality one, and it has double lock nuts on it. So you have the primary lock nut, and then you have the jam nut that goes in behind it. And that is one of the best graphite reel seats that I've ever dealt with. So, that's a good value at $60 for that rod. But going back to here, that's part of what I'm trying to show you guys here. I look at everything when I go to purchase Catfish rods. What is the length? What is the power? What is the action? What is the line and lure rate capabilities? And what components does the rod have? What kind of reel seats, what kind of line guides, what kind of handles, all those things go into my purchasing decisions. And they should, at least in my opinion, also go into your purchasing decisions, because at the end of the day, we all want to get the best value for our money. So it is undeniable that a $70 rod with the Rip and Lip Supercat HD that has all metal reel seats is a better value than the Bass Pro Cat Max, which is an $80 to $90 rod that, for one, is inferior material, and for two, does not have all metal reel seats. And this is not to pick on Bass Pro, because I like Bass Pro in general, but some of their products are overpriced. And as far as I am concerned, the Bass Pro Cat Max rods are the most overpriced rod on this list, because as you can see, they're up here, toward the top on price. They go up to $90. This is a composite rod that is built just like an ugly stick. It's a fiberglass graphite composite. It does not have, a high-tech, durable, finish or paint job. It does not. It's not UV reactive. There's nothing special about the paint or the finish. Definitely nothing special about the reel seats, because they're basic graphite reel seats. Nothing special about the line guide. There's nothing special about the Bass Pro Cat Max rod. I've had them in my hands. Okay. And to be honest with you, the actions on those rods are not all that great. They kind of got an odd feel to them as far as catfish rods go. I'm not saying they're a terrible rod. I've never fished with one of them. I could be impressed with it when I fish with it, but I'm not impressed with the rod overall for the price. And for any of you that own them, feel free to drop me comments in the box, in the comment section, and say, tell me otherwise, and tell me I'm wrong about them. But I don't feel like I'm wrong about them. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bash on Bass Pro, again, because overall I like Bass Pro. But some of their products are a good buy, and some of them are not. And the Cat Max rod, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the least value-oriented rods on this list. And they're a popular rod. They're out there in all the Bass Pro stores, and that's one of the reasons I want to particularly mention that to you guys about that rod. Okay, so then we go to part 2 on my notes. Is these rods all have stainless steel one-piece guides. Okay, and then number 3 is these rods, pretty much all the rods on this list have, or at least models available that have a higher line rating and a sinker rating of at least 8 ounces plus. Okay. So most of the rods on this list have at least a model available that would work for a big river with heavier current. Okay. So then we're going to go over, my personal picks. And it shouldn't be a surprise. I've got a green check mark next to the Rip and Lip Supercat HD, because that is, the Super Cat HD is essentially the same as the Legacy, as their Super Cat Legacy rod, with the addition of the all metal reel seat. Okay, you are going to pay a little more money for that, but the reality is they're only charging $10 or $15 or so more for the all metal reel seat version of the same rod. So it's a 7.5 foot single piece S-glass blank. That's a medium heavy power fast action. So, good quality blank, good quality components, and, an all metal reel seat. So it's a very good value. And if I were to find one in a store someplace at $70, I would probably purchase it. So for any of you who have access to those rods in a store, it would be a good buy at $70 for sure. But again, the shipping thing comes in, so that's something that you do have to consider. But now, because it is a good value at $70, if you did have to pay shipping on it, it's going to put you right up in the same price category as some of these other rods that are closer to $100. But the reality of it is materials and components wise, that is basically $100 rod. The price they have it at, it's a very good value. So I mean, there's room on that rod to kind of bend a little in terms of shipping. So that's just that. But okay, so the tangling with Catfish rods. Okay, my only qualm with those rods is they're still being made out of e-glass, which is an older material. Okay, but because they do come with all metal reel seats and a lot of the other features that I desire in a heavy duty catfish rod, and they are only $80, they're not a bad buy if you can get them without having to pay the shipping on them. However, I would not pay for those rods if I had to pay, $15 to $25 in shipping. But if you know someplace where you can walk in and buy a TWC, tangling with catfish rods, then by all means do so, because they are a good pick, and that's why I have a check mark beside them. The Whisker Seeker Full Metal Jacket, that's a premium grade rod, right up in the same class as some of these other $90 to $100 rods. And if you can walk into a store and buy that rod for $94, then that is definitely not a bad pick, and that's why I have a green check mark beside it. Catch the Fever Hellcat rods, original, $95 for the standard 7.5 foot layout. Possibly the best rod for the money on this list. Possibly the best rod on this list, period. Because for one thing, that's a S-glass carbon composite blank, which sets that rod apart from the majority of the rods on this list. Then, of course, you have all metal reel seat, EVA handles, all more guides, and heavy duty stainless line guides, and more of them than like on the original Big Cat Fever rods that they came out after. Yeah, a very, very good rod for the money. A very, very good value in fishing rods, and they also are one of the few rods on this list that have a really good heavy-duty UV reactive paint job on them. Okay, so now the Mad Cats do too, and the Mad Cats come in some really cool colors. And for $100, the Mad Cat's definitely not a bad buy. But the Mad Cats are all solid S-glass, whereas the Hellcats are a cut above in terms of the actual rod blank material. Okay, and the Mad Cats, as you see, is one of my number one, or one of my higher picks, just like the Hellcat rods. And then the Catch the Fever Big Cat Fever rod, the Zach Royce edition at $100. That's one of my top picks because that is a dang good rod. They took the original Big Cat Fevers, and they upgraded them, made some upgrades and color change and stuff like that to them, and they changed kind of the handle layout. They added a gimbal, heavier duty eyes, and more of them. or line guides rather, and more of them. You know, they definitely took the original Big Cat Feeder rods and upgraded them, you know, pretty fiercely, I might add. And at $100, that rod is definitely a good buy, and hence the reason that it's also on my top picks. Okay, so we've gone over all the notes. Now we're going to go to the final, to Tier 1. Okay. Tier 1's a shorter list because there's not near as many Catfish rods in this price range, which as you can see is the most expensive, and the price is $100 plus. So this is where we get into a lot of these Catfish Sumo rods that a lot of people have not heard of or seen. Okay, Catfish Sumo Chopstick Master Series is $110. Now the Catfish Sumo Golly Whopper, that's a Kayak Catfish Signature Series rod at $135. Now it is a rod that has a different feature to it than any of the other rods that I have on any of these lists, in that you can change handle length settings on this rod. Okay. So you can go from a shorter length handle for kayak fishing to a mid-length handle for regular boat fishing to a long handle for bank fishing. Now, what that tells me, however, in my engineering-oriented brain, is that there is no way that that rod blank runs through the entire length of the handle, because you cannot change the length of the rod blank while at the same time changing the handle length. So I do have questions about the rod's overall durability if the rod blank is not running through the full length of the handle. Now, they may have a system figured out, or they may have, the end of their rod blank may be thicker and heavier, through the handle to kind of make up for some of those durability or potential durability issues. I don't know. I've never personally seen a Catfish Sumo brand rod, period. With my own two eyes, other than on the internet and on YouTube videos and such. But as far as having one in my hands, I've never, not yet, at least. So I don't know exactly how the Golly Whopper is designed as far as the handle layout goes, but I know that's what it's capable of doing, and I know that at least has the potential for some durability issues. So, but if that's a rod that you guys are interested in, if you feel like it's a good value and that's a feature that you are really, interested in, then, by all means, feel free to purchase it. And then, heck, when you do, get back to me and let me know what you think about it. So then you go to the Catfish Sumo Chopstick Elite 150. Okay, that's a $140 rod. And that's basically their, most premium grade fishing rod. And then the Catch the Fever Hellcat Revenge, their Catch the Fever's newest rod, has a range of $150 to $215. The $215 price tag, by the way, is for their 10-foot model. Okay. Then we go next to what I consider to be the most ridiculously priced rod on this list. Okay. As you can see in my notes, these rods are made with the most premium materials and components, and then the star indicates the lack of all metal reel seat. It's graphite instead of all metal. Okay. The only rod on this Tier 1 list that does not have an all metal reel seat is the Okuma Battle Cat at $161. Now, it's supposed to be a heavy duty, like round pipe type graphite reel seat. So it's probably one of the heavier duty graphite reel seats on any of the rods on my lists. Okay. So it is a premium reel seat as far as graphite reel seats go, but it is still a graphite reel seat. And $161 is a lot of money for a rod with a graphite reel seat. Okay. That may be a phenomenal rod. It may be. and some of you own them. You know, if you do, let me know how great a rod it is if it's great, or how crap it is if it's crap. But it is not a rod at that price that I would be even remotely interested in because of the other rods available on this list. I'm just giving you honesty. Honesty in terms of what's out there, what the prices are, and how I feel about them, and why I would or would not buy them. Okay. Okay, so then the last is the Meat Hunter Boss Hog Rod Series. Okay, so basically this is kind of like getting on the internet and buying a custom fishing rod. So you put in the specs that you want. You go through all their selection boxes. I've been on their website. I've checked this out. You go through all their selection boxes. You get it all fixed up, and then you pay $229 plus shipping to have this rod sent to you. And to be honest with you, I looked through the whole entire selection process. Personally, I do not feel that that is a $229 rod. That's the most expensive rod on any of my lists here. I don't feel that's a $229 rod. Just to have the experience of going online, picking out your own features for a rod, $229 in my opinion is still not worth it. For any of you who have done it, you know, I'm not trying to crush your feelings or anything. You know, I'm just trying to be honest about it. So now we get to my green check mark. Okay. Personally, there is only one green check mark, as you see, and that's on the Catch the Fever Hellcat Revenge. That is the most advanced rod blank and the most advanced rod period on this list. It is a truly premium grade rod with premium grade components from the butt to the tip. Okay. They took their really high quality Hellcat blank that's, you know, carbon and S-glass, and they advanced it even further. They put better eye line guides on and more of them. They did a high-tech epoxy coating on the whole entire length of the rod for protection. The handle is this upgraded silicone rubber mixture that is awesome. It's got awesome metal accents on the handles, color accents everywhere. It is. You can look at the rod from one end of the other to the entire length of the rod and see that it was extremely thought out. The entire process of making that rod and designing that rod. So, in my opinion, that is the best buy on this list. Because I don't feel, for one thing, that the Chopstick Mattress Series even belongs on this list, because it shouldn't be a $110 rod based on features and components and characteristics. Probably the only thing that separates the Gollywhopper from the Chopstick Mattress Series is the handle and the ability to change handle lengths. Okay. That's, in my opinion, why that's a $135 rod. Okay. Catfish Sumo Chopstick Elite. Truthfully, it should be, honestly, it should be a $100 rod as far as the, you know, materials and characteristics of that rod as well. So, and as I've already stated, the Okuma Battle Cat definitely should not be a $161 rod. So the only rod on this list that I see personally is that is justified in its price is the Hellcat Revenge rod. Okay, and the price on the Boss or the Meat Hunter Boss Hog rods is way off, in my opinion. And I'm sorry if I'm hurting anybody's feelings, because I certainly don't mean to. If you've purchased any of these rods, but I'm just trying to put the information out there, that, you know, and put my opinions out there in regard to these things, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help everyone else see, you know, what is and is not a good buy out there on the market. If you are, you know, wanting to buy, you know, whether it's your first catfish rod or if it's your 15th catfish rod. You know, I want you guys to at least have a general idea of what's out there, what the prices are, and whether they're a good buy or not. So that's the goal to this. So I'm going to turn the camera back around and say a couple of things right quick before I... Okay, so before I close this down, I'm pretty well done with this material. So before I close this video down, I'm going to say that I am going to have a part 3 to this, where I'm going to go over my own personal catfish rods, what I'm using and why. And, I'll bring them out, an example of every one of them out, and show you guys, what I've got, what I'm using, and why I'm using it. Excuse me. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope that this information was very helpful to you guys, because that's, at the end of the day, that's really what I'm trying to do here. These things interest me. And things that interest me, I'm often passionate about. And the things that I'm passionate about, I try to share those passions with other people. And when it comes to catfishing, that's one of my favorite things in the world to do. And I'm big on equipment and equipment specs and stuff like that. And so I want to share all this information with you guys so that, for any of you, as I stated already, for any of you who are interested in buying catfish rods, whether it's your first one or the next one, at least, somebody like me putting this information out there can hopefully be helpful to people, to other people. So, I'm not saying that I'm the world's greatest expert on catfish rods, because I'm not, but I know a lot about it. I've done a lot of research, and that's what I'm putting out there for you guys, so you guys can see, exactly what's going on. Now, there are a lot of other rods out there on the market that I've not listed on any of these lists. And there are definitely other rods out there that will work for catfishing. So, with these videos, if one of these rods that I've got on my lists are not rods that you're looking at, you can at least look at the information on my videos and say, well, this rod will definitely work for catfishing because it has, X power and X action and X length and X features and characteristics and components that would make it a good catfishing rod. So, at the end of the day, I hope this information helps you guys. I hope that everyone's enjoyed this video and all the other, videos that I've put out. If you like this content, please give me a like and subscribe so that, you can be, given alerts and such when I put more videos out, because, I'm making and dropping videos as often and as much as I can. For, any of you who have liked my videos and subscribed to my channels and stuff, I greatly appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to, catching you guys in the next video, the last part of this catfish rod video. So, you guys have a good evening. Thank you for your time. Look me up on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok at River City Outdoors 85. Thank you guys and have a great evening.